paintings, pottery, they could really, because as I said in the email, I just have to market myself better, Will, now that I'm not formally. So thank you for considering.
Totally. Check it. So,
okay.
So check out it. So
Dennis, you should run for governor. You don't have a governor in Texas.
Oh, no kidding. Don't even get me started, Dana.
Hi, Taria.
Hi, Taria. And hi, Selena.
AJ, can you drop that when we get there? AJ, will you please just add that link when we mention that? Hi, Taria.
Oh, Taria, you're muted.
What are you mentioning?
You're muted.
When I mentioned Dennis, will you make sure you have a site link ready to share in the chat?
Which link? I just
his website, DennisScatter.com.
I'm running around. Say that again.
No problem.
I can't hear anyone.
Selena's muted too.
No, she said she can't hear anybody.
Thank you.
That's on, Selena.
That's beautiful, Will. And
can't hear anybody.
Beautiful. Thank you.
No problem.
You're muted, Selena.
Again, hyper alignment. Everybody should win.
Do you know how to unmute yourself, Selena?
Selena, can you hear us?
I don't think she can, and I think she froze.
I think she froze. I do too.
Yeah. Well, people are certainly taking their time about all showing up.
Yeah.
They're on millennial time.
Oh my.
Dennis, what are the chances that these two gargantuan mistakes by the Texas politicians results in a political purging? Nobody's happy about them not having electricity, and nobody's happy about a couple things going on there.
Will, a Democrat has not won a state election in Texas since 1984. They have locked the state in, and it's a dynasty. It's not a political party anymore. And Greg Abbott's shameful, reckless behavior in opening up the state, throw away masks, everything's normal, it's an obscenity, and it angers all of us.
Yeah.
My mom is, so every time we talk a little bit lefty on here, I worry because my mom is conservative, right? But my mom is crazy about them.
She's crazy about who?
Oh, we just lost Will.
We lost him.
Here he is.
She's big on masks. She's very conservative, but she is really angry at people not wearing masks. So I'm sure that there are a lot of conservatives that are going to be really angry about that too.
Good, because it's terrible. And that freeze, there are still tens of thousands of Texans that don't have water that they can drink.
Where's Leigh?
Amazing. There's Leigh.
Oh, where'd he go?
Oh, here's Forrest.
Oh, Forrest went to Hawaii.
Yes, with Ted Cruz, huh?
Yep.
That's funny.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all.
Hi, Boris.
Hi, Dennis. How you holding up?
Wow, look at that.
Doing well.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Did we lose Selena?
Looks like we did.
Yeah.
I see the mute is still on.
But where's Leigh?
I will.
Big.
Oh,
you're right, Dana. I have 6:58 here in Texas.
I do as well. 58. Yeah. Well, he's been on. We've been doing tech rehearsals and everything. And Alex,
good.
Alex is completely anal. So I'm shocked that he's not sitting here,
ready to roll.
Leave?
Yeah.
We're here and we can hear you.
Oh, there's Leigh.
I should have gone to my participants. Yeah. Well, you are. Don't apologize for it, Alex. You're good.
Here, put it here. We are getting mixed.
Mick.
Getting mixed.
Great.
Ah, Roman in the Gloman. In
There's
der
Selena.
Moonlicht.
Selena, you're back. Oh, I think she's
this
still
is
frozen.
See, this is kind of the range.
Oh, phooey.
All right. All right.
Selena,
I'm gonna recommend we just start 3 minutes late and be together.
right.
yeah.
All right.
All right. Once
look
we
at
get Leigh.
How's the sound? How's the sound? And where's the?
How's the sound?
How's the sound?
You're a little hot.
A little hot.
All right.
We can do something.
I can.
Yeah, it's a little. It's
Okay,
Okay, you talk.
all right. Dana, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, Leigh. But you,
Good.
yeah, that's a better level. That's a better
All right.
level.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Good.
All
Good.
right.
Hi,
Now,
Lee.
Hi. How
let's
are
get
you
everybody
today?
Back.
Oh, there you are.
There were.
Looking in the
Let's
wrong
get
place.
Boris back here.
Yes.
And as soon as we get people, okay, I think I'm going to open it up.
Okay.
Here, let me see if I can get a picture over here.
Yeah, wait, no, yeah,
You need that open?
that's it.
Oh,
Good.
okay. Let me, can I,
Okay.
full screen, yeah, where,
All right.
my glasses,
So
that's like,
I'm going to open it up. There we go. Right on time.
Cool.
And people will start flooding in.
I'm gonna go ahead and mute.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody,
Okay.
why don't you mute yourself? And Taria, you want to mute yourself?
I'm gonna.
And you all know the routine.
Okay.
You're not gonna see.
Alex, let's mute you. And
You can do that yourself. It takes a lot of. I mean, if I am to mute.
okay, I got you. I did it. You're right. Okay, and I will open it once we have everybody in. I love that, Boris. You know. All right. So we're all waiting just for a moment. I'm just going to wait for Selena to come back, and then I am going to wait for the crowd to stabilize.
So let me take this.
Okay, I'm going to. All right. So Will, you know the routine. You got everything on everybody. Okay. What do you think? All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dana White. Welcome to another Myth Salon. Well, today we're in for quite a treat. Before we open up, I want to talk a little bit about the pandemic that has been sweeping the country for the last year. It has leveled off in places like Texas. They're doing their best to drive the pandemic back into existence. But let's open it up with a moment of silence for everyone who has been so affected by this. We have over 530,000 people who have died in the past year. We're rapidly approaching 30 million cases in the United States. So let's do just a moment of silence for it. I'd like to read a poem by Gary Snyder. Seems appropriate for the world we're living in these days. Life is always changing. We are always changing. We live in a river of change, and a river of change lives within us. Every day we're given a choice. We can relax and float in the direction that the water flows, or we can swim hard against it. If we go with the river, the energy of 1,000 mountain streams will be with us, filling our hearts with courage and enthusiasm. If we resist the river, we will feel rankled and tired as we tread water stuck in the same place. Am I going to flow with my river nature today, or am I going to swim against it? This is what I ask myself when I get out of bed every morning. And when I go to sleep, I apologize to the river gods for any hard strokes I made against the current, for splashing about like a drowning person. I pray that tomorrow I may once again know the pleasure of following my soul downstream, because I've known rivers. And once we've known rivers, once we've stretched out on the dark waters, trusting the river gods, going in the direction of life, even if it is head first towards the rapids, we want to taste that water again. We want our souls to grow deep like the rivers again. Hearkening to my friend Jonathan Staggers, with whom I'm doing the verses of the Tao Te Ching now. Be like water. My youngest son, Andrew, is always telling me, Dad, be like water. It's really cool to see him picking this stuff up. So, with that, today we have Leigh McCloskey with us. I met Leigh 3, 4, 5 years ago. A woman named Scheherazade came into my home one afternoon at one of the Pacifica events. She said, "You need to meet this guy, Leigh." So I went out to his home out in Trancas. It's a beautiful experience the first time we met. And I've taken people out there. My heart goes out to Leigh and his wife, Carla, who during the pandemic have really had to kind of close up. They do a lot of the things that we do. They do workshops. They've had Michael Malura out there. It's a beautiful, beautiful home. And Leigh is such a gracious spirit. So today we have Leigh with another good friend of ours, Alex Rotaru, who has been a really good friend. So I'd like to turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Will Lynn, who will introduce the panel. And then we'll go to Leigh and Alex, and you'll see why I think today is going to be a very special Myth Salon. Welcome.
Thanks, Dana. And I better keep it short. And we do have a fighting adventure tonight, or a ritual, or I'm not quite sure what to call it, into a sacred space. But before we get started, I want to thank and welcome Dr. Rosalie Buck, who has begun helping us with social media. So I hope you'll check out her work on Instagram and Facebook. And I've also got to welcome us all to March and invite you to check out our new portal family dedicated to March. where you'll find immediate information related to the myths of Mars, Pisces, Women's History Month, Nowruz, and St. Patrick's Day. So it's my honor and pleasure to introduce our panel. You all know Dr. Dana White, scholar, author, host of this Myth Salon, and adjunct faculty member at Pacific Graduate Institute. We're also joined by Dr. Dennis Patrick Slattery, who's a mythology scholar, poet, longtime professor in Pacifica's doctoral program in mythology, and a prolific author. To check out his books and tours and events, you'd want to go to DennisPatrickSlattery.com, which we'll share right now in the chat. We're also with Selena Matthews, a clinical psychologist, author, and keynote speaker who graduated from Pacifica and has been an ever-present participant in support of this Myth Salon. She's the CEO of Soul Transformation Seminars. Many of you know Zaman Stanizai, a professor of mythology and political science at Pacifica, Cal State, and a poet, linguist, mystic, and Fulbright scholar. He's written extensively on a wide range of topics, from Indo-Iranian languages to identity politics, political philosophy, Sufi poetry, and esoteric Islamic thought. Boris Nunley is a professor of rhetoric, philosophy, and literature at UC Riverside, author of Keeping It Hush, the Barbershop and African-American Hush Harbor Rhetoric, and he takes an interest in issues of heretical energy, the dark feminine, gendered knowledge, racialized knowledge, and the demise of vulnerability. We're also joined by our good friend this evening, Tarja Ward, who's the founder of Bridging Worlds Mountain Retreat Center. She carries a PhD in depth psychology from Pacific Graduate Institute, and her expertise is in indigenous consciousness, and which is, of course, especially welcome tonight as we go into a kind of cave painting. Thank you for joining us, Tarja. My name is Will Lynn. I lightly moderate these myth salons, which I co-founded with Dana in 2016. PhDs in myth, and 5 years ago, I founded the General Education Department at Huston College, where we've committed to training our undergraduate filmmakers and performing artists in myth and storytelling. It's my honor to welcome Alex Rotaru and Leigh McCloskey. Alex earned his BS from MIT and his MFA in film at USC. Two of his documentaries have been selected as New York Times Critics' Picks, and we couldn't be more grateful for his directing and cinematography this evening. Leigh is a truly modern Renaissance man, an artist, author, actor, and visual hermetic philosopher. He began painting the hieroglyph of the human soul with the emergence of the Watcher language on 9/11/2001, which triggered his truly original work that covers the walls, floor, ceiling, and furniture of what Dana describes as a home library cave painting. Truly, I couldn't be more excited for this evening. Thank you, Leigh and Alex, for taking us into your space. I can't wait to talk about this when we're ready. And take it away, please.
Delighted to be here. Good to see you. So, well, welcome. This is my home, but it's also the hieroglyph of the human soul, and I look very forward to taking a little tour with you all, and delighted that you all speak the language, because I feel that a lot of this is very affirming for all of us, because as we know, when art steps in, it's no longer about proving theory or about ideas, it's about the sense that the art is the proof. And what I love about this, because you said that this began on 9/11/2001, and as we all have questions of, well, what is the nature and purpose of the journey? Why is it so difficult? When we respond with the creative, it's not a binary. It's not for or against. It's what happens here, which is how do we live with these things? Which is why I think today it's important, because this story will, I think as we wander through it, some will make a lot of sense. Others, if you have questions, just jot them down and we can talk about it, because I'd love to go back and really look more deeply, because what's really marvelous here is we have visual philosophy, meaning we really have this capacity to embody. And since a lot of us have theater backgrounds and the relationship to storytelling, we have a relationship to, well, how did this all begin? How did the hieroglyph of the human soul begin? And it began in a moment of great despair on 9/11/2001, with the questions of the collapse of the binary powers, which we can look at very symbolically, as we know. This fall of the false erections of money and God, the two erections of the great age of Pisces falling to the ground and bringing us to our knees. And when we look at this as art, one of the things we need to do, as we do when we are looking at the motives, is why was this done? Where was this done? For what purpose was this done? Why is this in a home? And why is this in a place where we have, for many, many years, for 40 years, had discussion groups every week? And so on 9/11/2001, I'm going to begin by taking us down to the floor so we can begin to see how there's going to be a very ancient narrative. This will become quite fascinating. This is the emergence of Tor. Now, Tor helps us understand that one of the possibilities for our amnesia is that we actually emerged from a type of much more ancient consciousness with a different physiology. And that the myth and story here that starts to reveal itself on what? On linoleum, on the ordinary surface, not marble or gold, but on truly the sacred nature of where we live with those we love. Only in this intimacy can we begin to hear the stories of our ancientness, because we're not trying to get somewhere. We're finally, as we do here, looking down. And she said that we are looking down 18.5 million years ago. And the great question was, what if we could enter the questions we were asking? No longer simply hold them, but enter them. And this is where we'll start to journey with the story of Eve that appears here. Why this would make Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung very happy is that I am not illustrating anything I think I know. That the revelation comes by following the energies of the Watcher language itself, which I'll show you this rhythmic pattern, but I want you to see here the smaller head and the apple. This gift of the apple, the gift of life, which also is the gift of death. And that the point of the smaller head, this idea of the chalice, of the bowl, is that we will have to develop the human library, the human imagination. What was once, as we can see here, do you see with Tor, if we move over there we are. We can see how she's going to tell us that our transformation was that we were going to move into the journey of becoming human. And I talked about the Watcher language. Well, let's go a little, just over here, onto the floor again. And this is the moment on 9/11. I want to show you this. Can you see this? Yeah. When I fell on my knees, and it really is reminiscent of an opera, because it's the falling on one's knees in that moment of despair, and we're visited by my friend. This is Champ. He's going to be with us. He's one of my little guardians. But as we see this elongated figure, this is the Watcher figure. Now I start following this language, really like a rhythmic gesture, like a jazz musician, just leaning into the riff. I don't know where it's going, but as it starts to emerge, almost like a resonance field, it starts to suggest the story of what it says is the hieroglyph of the human soul. And as I follow this language, this is where we begin to see the first emergence of the archetype of Kuan Yin. As I follow this rhythmic weave, she starts to tell me a story that we are returning home, that we are the outcome of a great question. And that as her being reveals that all of the entity, all of the qualities of sentience and consciousness, like the organs that make up our body, are necessary to the weave of the whole. All are whole and holy. Think again about domestic space telling us this, meaning intimate space, not where we're convincing one another, but we're on our knees. We're actually able to hear. Now the floor took, I was on my knees for 3.5 years. And I feel like in that state, in the child state, in the relationship like an animal to looking down, I was no longer looking away or looking toward. And I began to understand philosophically, this is what is meant when we begin, almost like the ancient Druids, to see our roots. And that's why, what connects to the floor? Think of the pun. Your soul, souls. So as the souls connect by gravity to this story, it begins to tell us that we are rising out of the living waters of eternal possibility, and that we will see this direction. You can see the mirror of self-reflection. But we could walk a little bit, because I want to create a bit more context so that we begin also to understand that this, like a theater piece, as it unfolded, began to take in the journey, because the question of why are we divided? What is this squaring of the circle, the right angle? What does that mean? And everything in that work, in this work, is essentially an answer or a insight that comes after we've done all this studying. And I think this is very important because as we move toward the journey of why and what is the nature of our deeper mythology, and here we see, we could look at this with the blind eye. If you're more comfortable with Odin, it could be Odin. But I see this really as Christ, this relationship of the blind eye of the Father, the knowledge of I think, therefore I am, which as we lift up, we will see moves into the mirror self-reflection. And this is the knowledge or direction of I think, therefore I am. As we look back down, we will come down and see this egg, you see, within, or seed within an alchemical alembic. So on the side of the law, we look over here and we see the open eye. And this is the open eye of love. I love, therefore I am, and I think, therefore I am. The knowledge of the Father and the Mother. And that as we are born of each, the question, and Alex is actually standing up in the right place, because here we stand in the relationship to self-reflection and unique identity, and the journey into the question of who am I? But this direction, we can see Sophia. And as she emerged, she started to reveal a story about the great mother, mater, mater, mother. And that in the nature of I love, therefore I am, we begin to discover our ancient story. And that's why in all of this, the possibilities of contemplation are endless, because we'll see the beauty of Sophia, but we'll also look up here. And I wonder if you can make out the eyes of the serpent, this mouth that is holding the egg. And here we have the mother and the father. And the quality of the mother says, because here we see the ark in front of her womb, and she says, I tell you, you enter and travel universes through wombs, not machines. If it takes you 100 million years to get to the nearest star, you have your physics all wrong. You are in a hologram. There is no there in a hologram. And then the Father says, with the cycles and the Ouroboros and time and the lantern upon the ages, that this is the qualities of both the cataloging and unique conditions with the gift of life that is held within the serpent's mouth in the crown of Sophia, because she is going to show us, as we tilt down, ours is to blossom. But to blossom is not one of us. And this is where she says, I am the great mother. I love all of my children. I love all of my atoms, Adams and Eves. I'm the knowledge of your atoms. There are no evil atoms. If you don't like your stories, tell better stories. And yours is to blossom. But let's see, what will this entail? And she says, now can we see this as we move down here? Can you get this, Alex? Do you see the face of the child, the infant, her belly? And we'll see here, moving from the mind, again, this beautiful vision of the feminine meaning, the quality of life. We are taught in our culture, the first principle is math. Sophia says, no, the first principle is life. Everything is inherently mathematical because it is uniquely connected to the whole. But it does not come first. What comes first is this relationship, and that's why, now we'll see this. As the story progressed, it went up onto the spines of the books of religion and tradition. And here's where we're going to start to see, again, not because I'm illustrating anything, but like all of us, I wanted to know, what is the Grail? Why do we struggle so greatly? And what is the point? And what's beautiful about this moment here is that as the story emerged, we'll see this reoccurring theme of the twins, the twin in light and the twin in shadow. And that this yearning, you'll see always this yearning. What this is telling us is we do not understand this yet because we think it's about the inner child. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the truth of human innocence, meaning the condition of the human being is that we simply cannot remember who we are. We are forced into a state of innocence, but composed of a state of ancientness. And this is why, again, this being in domestic space, in a library, it begins to say that if you cannot put it all together where you live, it's not much of a story. And as we'll see, that when we look behind here, we see all the different holy books. There's the relationship of the Bible, of the Zohar, of the Quran. All of the different religions are here. And in the mind of innocence, what is extraordinary, because it was not intentional, you can see the Encyclopedia of Religion. So philosophically, isn't this saying that you want to know what it means to be human? Well, go pick a book, and we picked this one. And it's all right, you know what? To know who we are, we're going to have to incarnate into all of this. Because if we're not willing to live the question, then we're not honoring it. And I think this is the nobility I recognize now in all of us. We have been willing to live over and over the questions so that finally we, where we live, can put the story together. That the chalice of wisdom is not one book or one tradition, but the truth Sophia relates, which is love with a capital L. My knowledge is I love you. And in love, you begin to see that you are part and parcel of a much greater story. And above her, we'll begin to see this relationship once again of the dreaming self, this cosmic infant. But why this is important is we can think of it as cosmic innocence, meaning that innocence cannot enter in judgment. It must enter in birth. And therefore, the condition of this eye, this seeing, begins to dream itself. We can see this. It's almost as if you were trying to think yourself into creation. Because if you actually moved, it would all tumble. It's built on gossamer. And that's the truth, like the tissues in the body. It's the story that we have been building, a quality that, again, you see the blossom. We're going to blossom. And it's in the union of the mother of light and the mother of dark. The spherical knowing of the journey and the pyramidal knowing of the structure. To know this is to journey into thought and into love. But to realize it as a blossom is to seek union. And this is why we'll begin to see everything is interactive here. I put my left hand on the egg or the seed, and I put my right hand on the journey of the serpent and the heron, the story of the ark. But let's look at this physiologically. This ark is also the left and right hemisphere. It's looking at the quality of I think, therefore I am. Well, when I think, I separate. But this is I love, therefore I am. And when I love, I feel connected. So what is it that finally reconciles this? Is a deeper vision that is not one or the other, but that which finally lifts us up into this narrative of the heron or the phoenix. And again, the idea of the enlarged head. What we see here is that the head are like the head of children, meaning that they are ancient, but they are innocent. And only their faces can enter the egg, because the question is, we're going to change our physiology into a smaller head, which will create what we think of as masculine and feminine, but the qualities of thought and love, so that they will find union through birth and life, and this is the journey of the mother. Now, there's an even greater mystery, because we wonder, well, what's behind this? And this blew my mind, because this will also reveal the narrative of Lilith, the first wife of Adam, she who was rejected. But in this, it's not that she was rejected, it is that she is hidden. And let us think of this as a type of theater piece that says, from love and the journey of blossoming, I am going to have to turn the corner into the mirror of self-reflection. But why? What happened to the goddess? And she's going to say in this moment, you see, I didn't disappear. I turned myself inward so that you could blossom. And we'll see her face, this beautiful face of Lilith, and the journey on the stretcher bars, the back of the canvas, that which is never seen because we only look at the front. And she's going to tell us that in ancient times, she was the connection to the goddess and direct knowing. And that if she is outward, the pretense that we do not know cannot be embodied. And that's why over the spines of my family photo albums. We'll see here. We'll see this serpent energy coming down, but made up of apples, of course. And the life vitalizing, meaning through generation. Why have we gone through generation? And she is going to tell us, so that you could blossom, I, the goddess, sacrificed myself. I turned myself inward. And in this, Adam and Eve became unable to remember who they were. And this is the ideal of taking a cosmic love, big heads and directions to the stars, and cosmologies, and creating a condition where we cannot know, and therefore we have to trust the small fires of intimacy. Think of our primordial parents saying, I don't know if we're going to make it through this night, so therefore, let us look to each other. Let us learn to trust each other. And this, I believe, is the beginning of the transformation of the human ego. And what we're looking at now up on the ceiling, and the relationship of the story, is that we are completely immersed, as in a cave painting. And as we'll look from where you are now to where I am, we can begin to see this journey that will take us up into Phoenix Arise. And this might have to have better lighting on it. Because as we look up, can we see that very well? Ah, good. Got it. This painting, like the Watcher language and like the name of the hieroglyph, the human soul, becomes truly revelatory. This I finished in 1997 after 4 years, and it's called Phoenix Arise. This is going to become the hidden narrative of our story as human, that we are each a phoenix. We're not born into time, we're born into creation. We are whole and holy, and that our DNA is actually a artistry of perception and consciousness. We'd call it an art form. And this is important because this allows each of us to say, well, I am not born incomplete. Like a piano, I am given an instrument. And these structures are what I am woven of. And this is why the Watcher language also is about a weave. Everything being interconnected, we think of strings, but this is strings as sentience, meaning that as we follow, like in a rhythmic movement, the story of standing before the Phoenix Arise. And if we tilt down, we can actually start at the ceiling here. Look all the way up. Do you see how the Phoenix is up on the ceiling? And we'll start to come down, and maybe you can hold the mirror and the parts of the painting, because this will show us the journey that each of us take that begins as on the floor. Can you see this meditating self here? The dreaming self, like we saw in the painting that Lilith is behind. Because as one stands here, do you see, we put our feet here. And that as we do, notice as you lift up, we see ourselves. We are the outcome of rising out of the living waters to finally realize in this journey toward unique identity and self-reflection, the creation of an ego, we have finally achieved where we can go no further. That is why this is at home, meaning how do we understand our intimate relationship with these things? How do we live our myths? Why are they relevant? And here it's saying, because in this story, within intimate condition, where people like yourselves and ourselves have gathered for 40 years every week, reading 25 years of Theosophy of Jung, the Red Book, reading the Black Book soon. We're going through all of the different storytellers and traditions, and I'm convinced it's about they feel honored here. And that's why they're rising, so that we can put our hands, you see, in the mouth of the ancestors. And that anyone who stands here is told the same thing. You see me because I'm standing here, but if you were standing here, it would tell you that you were this. That you have reached a point of unique identity and self-reflection. I see that I am me and not you. But part of the philosophical problem we're having now is we think in reflection, and everyone feels like there's nowhere to go. A sense of claustrophobia. I see myself and I am not enough. I thought I would see God by this point, but I see me and nothing else. This is actually an indicator in a type of interactive, creative, imaginative instrument, saying, do you see the mandala? Do you see your heart? Do you see the truth that above is Sophia, the relationship to love and the mother, the quality of love with a capital L? Well, think of that as yearning, meaning that we cannot touch her, but we yearn to connect. So when we come down from her, we'll begin to see this journey that is talked about of the story of the stone and the shell, the oceanic self, and the dark sun within the mind that really, like sperm and ovum, that in this unconditioned feminine wholeness and holy life itself will come down to once again visit with the heron, with the phoenix, and once again see this arc of the ancients that we will now stand upon and begin to see ourselves as journeying this great story that reaches a point that says, when you can no longer get there, when you think you have to get and touch those people that you see in reflection, when all you do is self-critique, it whispers, turn around, you're home. It is not a matter of more. It is a matter of honoring the truth that you come from, a journey that you are embedded and embodied by. And as we turn away from reflection and what do others think, much more toward intimate space and home, back into the library, we ask a question, what do I do to those and for those I love? And this began from my love for my wife, Carla, and my daughters, Brighton and Caitlin, on 2001, as those towers came down, and I think we all fell into despair. There was the question, what do I do? I was brought onto my knees, and it said, tell a story. Tell a story you can live with. And tell it in a way that's not shouting at the neighbor or correcting them because you think they're wrong. We had a fire come to our door with the Woolsey Malibu Park fire. And rather than leaving or running, we stayed. And I say to people, there was a lot. I feel like the captain of a ship. I am not leaving the ship. But I also learned a great deal. We're in a time where the fire is upon us. And the point is about how do we deal with the drought in the human heart. And part of that in this story is not making art for the reflected world, but art as a relationship with the creative process. And I tell poet friends of mine, if you have 50 people who read your poems, great. But if no one does, then read the poem out loud, because those qualities will hear you. That's the silence I have in here. It's not a madness. It's a sense of fullness. And that's why as we walk now from the Phoenix, let's take a look this direction. Because this is going to show us this reoccurring theme here. I think we all want to know, well, what is the apple? What is the chalice? And as I touched her belly, I realized here was the apple. And as it developed, here was the chalice. Then here is the blood. And the question is that the gift of life is the primary gift. And that we see up above Kuan Yin, the return of mind, which has been separated from the body, allowing us not to actually go there, but to create alignment. This studio we're in right now is above my studio below. So we have as above, so below. And we're going to walk over to the other side of the room and look at my tarot, because that is downstairs. My 17 years work in black and white on the 22 major arcana of the tarot that revisioned the entire tradition. I feel like an archaeologist, not by going away from it, by going deeper into it, by bringing it home and telling us that our structure of as above, so below was asking us a question of how across the ages do we finally put these things together when they are literally different rooms in the house. So this, we talk this way. We begin to move, and we can see with the paintings in the mind of an ancient god, these were questions I asked, actually based in 3 nights of lucid dreams, a bit like Scrooge, but in a different way, that took me back to ancient Atlantis and dealt with the writing systems, the politics, and also the 3 different periods that the first one had no right angles and everything looked a bit like Gaudi. It came right up out of the organic nature, and then the planes of high conductivity and pyramids. And this, though, becomes the gathering of ancient memory. And as we look down here, I want to show you, can you see Splendor? Do you see her? This Oceanic Mother? Can you get a good? Yeah. Do you see her with her wonderful dolphins? Well, because as we step to this side, do you see, and look back up, I'll show, let me just, this from Splendor, the Oceanic Mother, in this setting, a bit like a set for actors. And I'm convinced that this is what this is about. All of our ancient sites were about this, that in the same way in theater that your sets, your props, your costumes, and the play keep the imaginative field in agreement, which allows ensemble and allows an amplification of energy that isn't one, but is a cumulative energy. And this is what this is actually getting at, because it's a cave painting. We're coming full circle to a question of, well, why did we take a curve and draw straight lines through it? And it says, because by going through history, by gathering, you were actually exploring this nature we see on the floor of the grail, of the chalice. And that as we see, once again, this relationship of the chalice, and we will tilt up, and I will stand here so you can see over my shoulder. Can you see that? Can you see Christ on the floor? And this, because this allows each of us to walk in and to realize that I think I am a phoenix composed of the chalice of living wisdom. And the question then, as we continue, we'll go around this direction, because this is part of the journey into the fifth world, part of the gate that's opening. And I have to say, my dear friend Whitley Strieber, I was reading his book, Supernatural, and we ended up, these fine, fascinating light craft started showing up on the floor. So I'm very curious about that. But this is also the story of Gaia. And can you see her, or should I take the lights down? Is that okay? Because once again, this reoccurring motif of the chalice, the gift of life, the apple being the gift of birth, and the truth of human innocence. So anyone that stands here puts their hand on her belly. And that as they do, they begin to tilt down. Can you see the floor here? Can you see this? And you start to see the heron and the mother and the infant and the eye of Ra. This starts to say, as you're going to enter into Gaia, into Earth, you're going to be composed of two conditions. One will be the eye of Ra, the qualities of the eternal, meaning you are a phoenix. But you will also be woven of matter, mater, mother, a unique time, a unique condition. And therefore, the journey, and we can see this is amplified on the books here. Can you go down there? See the infant there. Feel like an archaeologist. And Zenville is a tomb, and it's very interesting. He enters, but here we have the infant and the heron once again, this reoccurring motif of the guardian of the phoenix for each of us, and that we will take this journey, because as we look on the floor still, we'll begin to see, we can look at this as Minerva or Athena, but the idea of emerging fully conscious with the tree of life and the seed, and also the hummingbird, this reoccurring motif here of stillness while in motion. Because as one stands here now, we can start to see this relationship that will lead not as the mirror, which is a yoni of self-reflection, but here we have darkness, the mystery of birth and origin. And when one stands here, you do not see yourself. You see yourself as a watcher, entity without unique identity. And the question here, as we can see with the twins, once again, this reoccurring motif of the ark, of the twins, of the parents, of the apple, that there's going to be a journey of all the different kingdoms, meaning that if we do not honor all of them, we are composed of that which we have forgotten or left out. And I like to put it this way: we don't build spaceships, we build mind ships. It's not about going somewhere else, it's about coherence, about creating conditions where these things like a garden are allowed to grow. And that's part of the condition here, because we're going to look at the relationship of the painting and the heron once again. You can see how everything is about journey. From the light of being, this question of life leads to the phoenix, the womb, And we see the African Eve, the first mother, that begins to say that our journey will be an adventure of being born. You can see here. And that the journey, everything like the tarot works in a wheel. This actually works up from the journey of birth and vision, of Kundalini and the goddess, to the birth of unique self into the arc of existence. But first we begin directly connected to archetype. We're going to move to this story of mind, the beginning of Apple, unique identity, the light of mind, and this great journey we will take into the knowledge of the serpent, who holds in his mouth the apple, the gift of life and the gift of death. And therefore, she will say, as a phoenix, this ark, this creation, this mother, will allow you to finally emerge here, which is where we see the Grail Mother. We see once again the chalice and the apple and the book. Now there's books. Now we have a library. And we have twins. And this is the story, once again, of finally bringing back to life the twin qualities of what we think of as the two hemispheres of love and thought, unique identity, and shared reality. Because the greater wisdom is the love of beauty. And in that we begin to see ourselves not in optical and horizontal ways, but as depth emerging. And that's why, as well, you see it doesn't end, it keeps going and going. But this takes us, because the question was, all right, well, why do we leave this, why do we take this adventure of birth? What's the point? And this is actually going to say something quite wonderful. And this, do you see these three? I redrew this Egyptian hieroglyph of Gebenut because I wanted to know through my hand what the story was. And you see the erection here is over his umbilical connection. And this is very important because this is actually the expression of desire, the yearning, truly a divine erection, yearning to return to the great fullness, but is beginning to fall backward, almost like a dance. It's an intentional fall. And here we can see the right angle, the squaring of the circle, the applying of unique qualities to her absolute fullness. And in this also we see how he is looking what? Toward the horizon. And his arm is bent, he is focusing. So this is the story of ourselves as a unit, meaning that we are composed of qualities that we do not understand really relate to our sensual knowing, not just our intellectual knowing, because this will bring us into the sacred DNA. And before we leave today, I want to show you how my Phoenix Arise painting creates this holographic double helix DNA weave from my painting iterating itself truly in a fractal way. Because this is starting to say that our DNA is a living work of art. And that the relationship here, we'll begin to see, this is my forbidden fruit. It's the delicious knowledge of Eve. My archetype of the sun is actually based on the Vitruvian Man of Leonardo. And this is the next iteration, which is, this is in color. And she then returns this third element of the yoni, meaning what is this? Do you see, we go from the mind and being the measure of all things, to once again, the embrace of life, the allowing for the quality that lets this act in unison. Very important because up here we see again Isis, the winged Isis, with feathers of watchers. And she's going to actually take us on a journey that manifested here, because we'll see as we tilt down, everything here is interconnected. This heron, the picture of the heron at my front door, was when I was visited in 2005 on January 30th for over 40 minutes by a great white heron that came into my home. And we conversed, and he said that you think of me as a symbol, but I'm more than a symbol, I'm more than a bird. I'm the quality that ascends and returns, and I live in more than one world at a time. And I don't speak to you with words because I teach you to trust your inner storyteller.
Is this the Bennu bird, the inspiration of the phoenix?
This is the inspiration of the phoenix. The ancient Egyptians, this is the Bennu. This is what's so extraordinary. The painting Phoenix Arise attracts the ancient Egyptian Bennu, the phoenix, as if to say, yes, the last question of as above, so below wasn't just to become a greater library, but an integrated one. Meaning, how do we integrate? Because that's what allows us to think in terms of generation. My wisdom is not solocentric. It doesn't remain with me. Because this is an environment, it's like a theater company. we begin to grow the imaginative permission that allows these things to occur. And that's why the heron we can see in my art, we've already looked at a number of them, it became like a cave painter for me. It just became a reoccurring motif. And every time it did, it started to show me something different. Now look at what happens as we'll see the heron on my favorite chair. So we have the story of the chalice, of the heron, of Thoth. And it's going to show us this story once again, that as we rise up toward ascension here, this painting of mine, that will take us, as we can see, across the ages in a circular motion, across history like a great toroidal journey, gathering ourselves. We had to be Roman, we had to be Egyptian, we had to be Hittite and Aztec, because that is just as human. And this is the story that the ascension is not to leave any more than one leaves when they come here. It's to ascend into the library, into the imagination, and not be swept away, but to actually be anchored like an actor, being there for the third act and not thinking the play's about escaping it, because that's not really very good for the other actors. And this is why this is also my family. You're responsible. And what I love, it's true, get full of yourself. Your wife says, take out the garbage. And I almost feel like this is what creative spirit's going. It's like, take out the garbage, get over yourself. You're not so smart, enjoy it more. And here we have my lovely Puma, which is another story altogether. But she's a guardian that keeps an eye. You can see these are my tarot images, my tarot wheel that I created. And this is also a very good way to understand how we are made. That as we see these images in black and white, we begin to remember the keys of a piano. And as keys of a piano don't have a good key and a bad key, or a right key and a wrong key, this is what the archetypes teach. We have to stop composing our worldview based upon which keys we don't like, and understand the relationship of the instrument itself. And this is why, as we begin to look into our depth, think of the tarot wheel not as just a flat wheel, but as a spinning gyroscope. And that as one steps into it, now I'm going to step here with my lady Puma. But this is actually a wonderful symbol, because she's saying, release your inner animal. That the qualities of sentience are the panther in the dark forest, meaning it is all instinct. It is not about what you see. Those are the optics in the mirror. It's what you trust in terms of where you are and who you are. So as ascension, the question is, we take this journey of the wheel of the tarot, and we move out into, this is the mandala. This is one of the mandalas that comes from the painting Phoenix Arise. And this as well, over here, is the Phoenix. Is the DNA once again composed of the Phoenix Arise. Since I'm talking about this, why don't you keep with the camera, and I'm going to go get the cards. I'll be right back, because I think I should show you this. Just to make it even stranger. But, and we will come around to Mothership, Revelations in Pink in a moment. But let me show you this if I can, because this is the relationship. Now, also think of this as a fractal mathematical geometrical message, because I'd love to say I'm so clever I figured this out, but I realize that the nature of genius is, you don't figure it out. Things happen, and it becomes the mentor. It becomes, follow this, ask these questions. So I dropped the cards, and when I dropped the cards is where I saw the DNA. And I began with this. I looked at this painting. You can see this is my painting in card form. Well, when I discovered the DNA, I started playing with the cards. And as I did, what was astounding was that a friend of mine's daughter, who I was showing this to, I had seen this and I thought it looked a bit like an umbilical cord or serpent or question mark. And she just had the intuitive, and I thought, oh my gosh, because we know the story of the phoenix bird of immortality as it returns home after 500 years and builds a nest. And what is the first mandala, the first revelation, the first medicine wheel? It's a nest and feathers, just as in the story. Well, in the story, once the nest was built, it erupted into flames. I pull out the cards. it erupts into flames. And I can't figure out how you would figure out how to figure this out. So this then, I kept pulling out the cards and look at what will happen. It doesn't just show random flames, it shows a blossom. And as we can see from the first mandala we were looking at, it creates infinite blossoms, infinite mandalas that look like Indian baskets and Indian headdresses. And the Hopi say that the knowledge of the sacred DNA is in their basket weave. So here we have the first and oldest language of painting, which is just paint and imagination, storytelling. But then we have it as a fractal. So suddenly we have the same iteration over and over again, which is actually helping us understand Pythagoras, who said, don't teach fractions to the uninitiated. 2/3 of a dog is a dead dog. We have to speak in whole numbers, because that which is of life must hold whole and holy qualities. And that's why the mandala led, intriguingly enough, from the Watcher language, and this is a whole other story, there was an inundation of orbs in my photographs. And I found over the years that a debate over what something is not is about the greatest waste of time a person can engage in. So rather than getting into a debate, I used my father's advice, who was a painter. He said, when you can't talk about something, paint it. So I started painting, painted this large orb, but then she appeared. And this is where we begin to see, how does she look? Can you get a good, yeah. Because when she appeared, the story began to make a great deal of sense, which is she said, I am matter, mater, mother. I'm the knowledge of your atoms. There are no evil atoms. If you don't like your stories, tell better stories. I will remind you now of why are there so many tears in this human story? Why for this journey? Do you see a family over and over again in order to blossom? Why has it been so difficult? And only in intimacy, only when we return to that sense of there is no agenda of for or against, but absolutely contemplating the gift of life itself. She says, in this chalice of the gift, we see the twins once again, the two infants, meaning these qualities of love and thought, male and female, that are within each of us. And that as she allows us to perceive who and what we are, she says, look up. Now you see in the even greater story of the apple, of the serpent, and of the heron, that we'll start to see the Hopi Kachina. We'll start to understand that these beings, a bit like being the theater, hold us and allow us to engage our story, almost like a canvas. They create parameters that allow us to have conditions. And this is where she says, do you see the chalice here? The knowledge of the blood. Here we have the mother upside down in front of the eye. She's going to tell us. And what I like here is that this is also very physical. A person enters, you're like this, you feel it, like a cave painting. You close your eyes, you allow yourself to ask questions. Because the beautiful thing about art is it doesn't insist on being right or wrong. It tries to engage you to feel that your story is of value. So when you stand here, you experience a different story than I do. But what I love is it's, again, the arc of the ancestors and the ancients. And when we look at this entire relationship to the breast, to the womb, it's once again the story that every atom is whole and holy. And that if we come around this way, do you see this with the black hole, the eye, the pupil? Think of a story that we come from pure vision. But as pure vision, the question is, well, we have to take on a body. We have to take on a vehicle. And so as one walks this, we begin to see, oh, this is what happens here. We could actually take the journey toward her, and we begin to reach a point where we turn around and we are drawn back out into the story of birth. Now, what is fascinating is, because this is spatial philosophy, it's actually telling us she is not connected. She's not seen from the other side. What we do see are the mandalas. And this is important, because as we come around this corner, the question would be if the room were just black, just dark. And someone said, are you willing to be human? And we'd say, well, what does that mean? We say, well, we really don't know what it means. We can only know if we're willing to become it. Are you willing to become it? Well, there's nothing but darkness in there. I can't do that. Trust. You have to trust. And I'm convinced that we dove into these dark waters over and over again until finally we could cross this threshold and not leave home, be home, but see that we are the outcome of the gathering of this knowledge across the ages. And when we look up on the I-beam, do you see we see Newt? Once again, like in the hieroglyph below that I recreated, we have Newt spanning the ceiling. And above the wheel, she shows us in her heart, once again, the infant, the question of innocence. And we also see the journey that will take us over to the story that, in terms of our magical relationship with things, is the relationship here of the grimoire, which again is a book of magical spells that I created. And the best way to learn about a grimoire is to create one, because many of the secrets are not knowable. But it becomes really a great ritual. And I created this for a friend of mine's film, Elias Marriage for Shadow of the Vampire. But it was seen by Keith Richards, and this toured with the Rolling Stones from 2005 to 2007 on a bigger bang tour. And these images were projected onto enormous screens. And the night we saw it, Keith Richards, this dissolved. And then there he is smoking a cigarette, doing an acoustic solo in front of this magical grimoire. And to me, we can look at Keith Richards as a modern wizard, meaning that he has scoffed at death more often than not. And our dear friend Stash, who said that many tried to follow Keith, but they're all dead. So anyway, this was the grimoire. And in terms of looking into the story now, I'll sit with my friend here. And should we ask some questions, or should we continue on? What should we do?
Well, if you're at a stopping point, I know that there's an overflow of questions and ideas and thoughts, and I'm sure a lot of just praise. Wow, it's already coming through in the chats. I think I have to just take a moment to just say incredible. Thank you. That was an amazing tour. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, and it's I'm letting you off lightly. No, it does go on and on. I'd love the questions because I think we have a wonderful opportunity to look at them with visuals as well, to really look at them with a new layer. So yeah, let's just dive in. Whatever anybody would like to ask, or why don't we start there?
Leigh.
Excellent.
You know, I've known you for a few years now, and it looks to me like the hieroglyph room is still a work in process.
You know, Dana, I realized that, because somebody asked me that, and I said, I've been working on it for 20 years, but it's called the hieroglyph of the human soul. And if you think about the human soul, that is definitely a work in progress. I imagine, in fact, I hope that I have two deaths in mind. One, I'm just here and I just fade back into the painting itself, or just particleize and evaporate into the mirror. But there is this wonderful, very ancient feeling of dealing with qualities that have been so mentoring in a very, very remarkable way.
The postmodern, selfie yourself.
Oh,
while I set up
all right. There we go.
How about that?
So,
Good.
oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
And thank you for that.
Okay, sorry. Trying to lower on that. Yeah, maybe off. Yeah, I think off.
I wouldn't mind if Alex would find a way to put it on a tripod.
That's what I'm going to do right now.
Okay,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
go sit beside you, because I can't tell you how impressed I am with Alex's ability to bring this and capture it with an iPhone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No,
I mean, this is brilliant. I mean, what skill, what imagination and anticipation Alex has, and for him to be able to know what it is. And I know you've rehearsed a little bit, but
Only 5 years.
but the idea of this is a testament. This is really a testament to the technology that we have to bring the outside in and take a little thing that you hold in your hand and show the world what a wonderful space and what a wonderful creativity and soul you have, Leigh.
Well, bless you, Dana. I really, it's an exciting time because I've realized with the cave painting that this takes us back to our first technology, paint and storytelling, imagination. And then we have this, the technology side, which again, if used in this way, really becomes this dance of being able to share with those that care about these things, the qualities that allow them to really spend time in focused ways. And I'm convinced this is the nonlinear coherence going on. Like today, what I love about your Myth Salon is that people of like mind or fast, in a sense, shared inquiry that care about these things can actually talk with one another. And that's why I think the room is what it is because it was about really a room where for 40 years now, because I realize I've had over 4,000 discussion groups in this home. So that's thousands upon thousands of hours over the 40 years. And I'm convinced now that that's the very quality that triggered this because, I mean, even the acronym of the Hieroglyph of the human soul, after 10 years, I said, well, what's the acronym for that? And it turns out to be THOTHS, Thoth's Library, or Thoth's Library, which is astounding because it's as if to say that those that have gathered in this circle and those of us that have gathered on the couch, okay, and honored these things, like this with each other, okay, yeah, that have honored these things are actually sharing them now in ways that aren't the old way, which is first you convince your neighbor he should care about these things, as opposed to like Gardner saying, well, no, if we care about them, then if we begin by honoring them and don't have an agenda, who knows what might happen. And what I love here is that this is what happened. It was not a conceit. It is, in a way, a process of you'd almost say the greatest rebellion now is to love in spite of it all. To just say, if I'm going to die, then I'll devote myself to saying yes rather than yikes. And that's why this is also intimate space, because I think certain questions now, it doesn't matter what others think. It's how do you live with yourself? What do you do with the despair?
Well, and you have continued to renew and revitalize. And as many times as I've been in that room with you and many of the wonderful guests that you've had out there, it's never the same.
No.
I mean, it's as if the room reinvents itself.
If you think about, I started to realize that that's a really good insight because we are so used to a type of objective reality, meaning that things are just inert or they are. But if we think from an atom point of view, that paint or pigment is atomic, and therefore it is a coagulation of atomic structure. And this is why our ancient sites were not built with moving parts. They were built with the skin of paint in order to magnetize these qualities as an invocation. And I really feel you're right. I'm up here every day working on this all the time, and it is always different. And if we think of that as the metaphor and metaflor of the human psyche, it is trying to, I really believe, help us understand that we are far more remarkable than we think, but we've limited our perception usually to looking into the mirror or looking away, not starting with primary experience, but a type of reflective
Show them the
experience.
couch a little bit.
Oh, you want to see a couch? Alex asked me to show you the couch. Now, I'm the son of a mom who loved to pun. So, and Alex, my dear friend, is an awful punster.
No pun left behind.
Yeah, no pun left behind. So you must understand that. And also we found with alchemy and hieroglyphics that the double entendre, or the pun is, what? Are we on?
No,
We've lost your image.
Oh,
we did.
Yeah, just a second ago.
I thought you did that intentionally.
No,
There you are.
oh, we wanted to evoke a sense of mystery.
that was the imp in the machine that happened by itself.
Yeah, the gods
you-
of technology look askance at an old cave painter. They just
Take a look.
but anyway, the couch. Now, yes, to understand, I'm working on this when George Bush is working on Sofa, the status of forces agreement in Iraq. And I'm working on Sophia too, only a different conversation altogether. But Joseph Campbell pops in and goes, you see brothers ask different questions, but it's not a matter of comparison. It's what is your part in this story? And so I guess my part was that, speaking of Sophia, I was to recouch our understanding of things. So as we move into this reversible couch, we'll begin to see that certain questions show us an appearance on one place, and we'll see once again this relationship, as we can see, to the ark, and that we are on a great journey. Every pillow tells us this. So as we move out, then we'll start to take these off. Now this is where we'll also start to enjoy that the story of life is hidden even in the hieroglyph of the human soul. And if we think of the 3 trimesters we have, you see the first, second, third trimester, I'm convinced this, because if we look here, can you see Eve? Can you get a picture of her? Is that, oh no, okay.
She's there.
Oh, she's there, all right. This is Eve with the chalice, or the light of mind, the delight of mind. So she's, can you see her? Okay, okay. So here we have Eve. Now she's a light pillar, and I didn't expect her to show up, but when she did, she told me the story of Adam reborn and Eve restored, a romance in 2 parts. My 3rd book, please look it up. But on the light, she started to tell a story of, again, the flower, the blossoming that is life, that the chalice is really the story of the womb, and that as male and female come together, it's not either or, it's beauty. And on the journey of beauty, she will take us into the couch, and she'll begin to show us, because what happens here, and we'll get these lights off of the other pillows, because you might think this is all, but no, it's not all. We have more to reveal. And we will see this. Do you have enough light on that?
Yeah.
Okay. And now for something completely different. Here, we'll once again see this reoccurring motif of that the qualities of what we think of as the masculine are actually, with the umbilical severing, create conditions of separation, and therefore we create systems in order to reconnect. On the left, we will see the story of the apple, the gift of life, and the feminine, the vision of the eternal within the gift of life. Now, once again, we are composed of both of these qualities. And so therefore, as we see this, we will look at this reoccurring motif, again, of the chalice, of birth and life, and that we, through birth, are taking a journey through her, you can see her on the table, up into the phoenix arise. So there's actually a moving picture going on, but it's stationary. And after we've recouched our understanding, we put her back together and ask a question that maybe is so far so good. Oh, I can't believe I said that. All right, sorry. That was for my mom. Right. Okay, there we go. And of course, that's not the end of it, because my question was, well, what about the places that one can't see? And therefore, as we look, I want to pull around here. I'll pull out the couch. We'll just show this a little briefly. Yes. There we have. So we can see what's under the couch.
Have an eyeful.
The eye of the eternal. Keeping an eye on things. All right, let's sit back down, and I think that's enough. Let's just talk amongst ourselves.
Well, I did want to ask you a question. Part of what you're talking about, the Sophia connections, the puns, it reminds me, part of what's so unique about what you're doing compared to our other as academics and mythologists, depth psychologists, one of the things we like to do is make comparisons. This is like this.
Yes.
And having a conversation with our friend Christophe Lemuel, who's a director over at the Jung Institute of LA, some of y'all know. And we were talking about that, and this is something I do a lot. I make a lot of comparisons and connections. And he said, as long as you're making comparisons, they're impotent. They have to come together in the unconscious, in dreams, in art, otherwise the connections and otherwise the comparisons just remain comparisons and they remain kind of dead. And so I want to, appreciate that you're bringing a lot of the stuff we talk about, comparisons and connections we might abstract amongst ourselves sometimes, into a real visual expression of how they come together. And I'm wondering if that means anything to you, what Christoph was trying to express.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And part of the key, which you speak of, is coherence. How do we take random notes and essentially see the signature that allows for a type of passage, a type of musicality? And I think that one of the great things in this environment is, because it's self-instructive, is that the body feels its relationship to these different associations and they don't have to be explained. And I rather feel that that's the truth about most of this. It doesn't really need to be explained. It's much more as a storyteller to try and create a permission, meaning, well, what if we looked at it this way? Because I do think that if we think about comparison, oftentimes it's comparison, and unfortunately it becomes a binary, because it's comparison not on analogy and correspondence, but more in terms of critique and unique difference. What is fascinating for me are, in a way, and this is what I said about the heron, is where I see a reoccurring motif, and I realize that although it's the same image, being used in a different context, in a different part of the room, it takes on a different significance, which is fascinating.
I would correlate that with Jung's insight into the difference between signs and symbols. And since we're reading Schwala de Lubitsch right now in the group, that this has a Hermetic Egyptian initiatory meaning to it, and it connects with Jung's idea by the virtue of their organic birth from the unconscious. What you see here are symbols, they're not signs. And I've witnessed Leigh painting. I swear to you, he has no idea what he's doing.
No, he
can talk at the same time. His hand just keeps going. And not look at what he's doing. They emerge spontaneously.
They really do.
They do. I mean, you have great technique too, but they emerge.
But I feel like that's one of the missing keys, I think, to a lot of our disciplines is that, and what I love about Alex being a polymath, and I say I am to a great degree, is that there's a type of synesthesia. And because we live in a type of eye, ears, nose, and throat world, meaning what's your specialty, oftentimes there's a type of disincentive toward a type of creative resolution where it's not trying to arrive at a conclusion, but much more at a type of, I would almost say a type of like an improvisation class where you're creating the conditions and you turn it back over to the individual and you say, now where do you take it? And that's what I love about this room, because, and the cave painting element is it doesn't insist, it lives in an absolute state of suggestion. And I feel like that's maybe what Alex is saying, that for me over the years, and I think it's my actor side, taught me how to get out of the way of a character. And this helped me with the archetypes, because a lot of these energies you could quite literally be run away with, or they could run away with you. But this ability to not overly personally identify, like if I played a killer, I wasn't going to be a killer, but I had every feeling because I gave myself permission to know what that is. So my psychology essentially in a safe space. This is why I love the theater and why I love discussion within this room, because it allows us to explore these things without having to believe them, and therefore we're able to really honor them and see where they take us. Really a truly inspirational field.
Reading, you were here when Sonu Shamdasani was here, Dana. Reading Jung in this book is in this room. It's quite interesting. Because you can do the equivalent of active imagination without the imagination. All you have to do is look up from the page anywhere. And the associations will flow.
And maybe that's the key, is maybe we are really a group of individuals that are finding each other, a bit like, musicians, where they start to realize, well, not everyone's interested in that, but we are. And we have certain traits of listening and trying to really lean into the story, because I'm convinced now that it's not the war or anything that changes the war. It's much more about story, about how we tell our story. And what I love about this room and people like Alex and those that come here is that it allows us to revivify our sense of wonder, of possibility in a world that continually says these things do not matter. And maybe that's where we're getting, to see ourselves as custodians in a polymath way, meaning that I see that my contribution and others' contributions, that we're all holding, Alex, all of us are holding different pieces of a great treasure map, that as we come together in intimate space, not to convince those that don't care, but to actually honor those that do, we start to, speaking of coherence, create a different coherence that gathers rather than seeks to take. And that's, to me, this shifting from what we think of as the masculine, I must convince, to the feminine, I must honor. And something in that is what's shifting, I think, in a lot of us.
I like to hope so.
Hi, Leigh.
No, please go ahead, Dennis.
So Leigh and Alex, just such a powerful presentation. It's just enormous. And I'm glad you brought up Leonardo, because one of the best things that I've read in the last couple of years was Walter Isaacson's book on Leonardo. And one of the motifs that runs throughout is Leonardo's ferocious ability to see analogies where the rest of us would just see maybe disparate items in nature and then in culture. So I'm glad you brought Leonardo up early on. I'm fascinated, Leigh, with the creative process itself. And I can tell that you are as well from a number of things that you've said. So I have 3 questions. One, and Dana touched on this already, but I want to reformat it just a little bit.
Okay.
Did you in any way apprehend what you have created in its entirety, in its totality at any point? Or, and I don't mean to make it an either or, but I'm just getting a couple of things out on the table.
Right.
Or did it unfold slowly over time? That's one. Second, and I think you've answered it, but I want to say it again. Is it done? Are you evolving, or are you evolving all of your images, some of your images, even now? And 3, are you still learning what it is that you've created?
Those are great questions, and yes, I am still learning. It will never be completed, and it has been a slow reveal. One of the great gifts I've been given this year of turning 65 is there's something shifts in you, and you begin to really honor much more of the overview of the greater story, because for so many years I've been, in a way, almost like dragged by my ear. There's been no like, oh, how do you feel? It's more like, I have to do this. But what's been really brilliant, and I haven't had time, but maybe you can look at my Codex Tor, my books that I spent about 25 years on, really exploring the nature of consciousness and asking questions about consciousness with a brush and pen. Now, many of the images, like this room itself, came from a place that were well beyond my understanding, but they led to a type of understanding and a deeper type of trust. It's only in the last few years, really, that the coherence of this entire story has made sense. Like, I wondered why downstairs I spent 17 years on the tarot, and I realized that the work on the archetype for me, and because my work was not based on other drawings, but the dynamic energies of the philosophy itself, and as I went deeper with the work itself, like an archaeologist, I realized that the tomb had only been, in a way, inquired into, and it had a whole missing layer, and it started to tell me, and this is why, you asked about, am I still learning? Yes, this is I would say a mentoring device, like a library is. That if the library is essentially it is passive in that it is absolute resource, but it insists that to know something, we must engage. And because it is infinite resource, you could go to any particular book. So it begins to say, well, how are you going to put the story together, at least where you live? And that's what I like about the deeper overriding signature of this, because I think, like a lot of us, I said, I really think the mythic question is, well, how do we live these things? You know, how do you integrate them into life? How do you make them part of the community where you're not just studying these things in isolation, but they have a relevance? And I feel that because I never had an agenda, and in a way I was dealing with, well, this might be crazy, but it was being driven almost in a Blakean sense by a deeper muse that is pushing me as it did with the tarot, because I kept going deeper and things kept emerging, and I thought, I must be making this up, but then I'd research and go deeper, and I wasn't making it up, it was having a conversation with me. And I started thinking about acting, that if you're playing a role, the role begins to activate within you and begins to have discussions within you. And as you work on it, it becomes more and more a realized and unique being. And this is what happened with the tarot. They became, and I almost feel that this is part of why I'm able to do what I'm able to do, is because there is this deeper theatrical sense of, be careful of what you think you need to believe, because you'll be stuck in one book rather than being able to engage the library. That as in theater, don't judge the character you're playing or judge the characters in the play, but rather navigate them. So that's really what I think.
Yeah, beautiful, Leigh. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Well, that's done then.
any other question?
Leigh, I would love to ask you one simple question, but before that, I just want to say, through this whole journey that you've taken us on, I kept like all the blinders were coming off and coming off and coming off, and I don't even know what happened, where I was going, but I kept having this sensation of, oh, this is what it means to be human. Oh, this is what it means to be human.
Beautiful.
And it was watching you. It was just the way that you do what you do, and then watching every single image and story and color and all of it. So I mean, I feel like I can't wait to see what my dreams do tonight, because I feel like now I get it like I've never gotten it before, in a certain way, what it means to be human. You've just really given us that. So thank you for that. And, you know, I have a really simple question. That the apple seems to be such an essential original image for you, and I saw it everywhere, and you brought it into these beautiful stories you were telling, and I would just love to hear you speak about the apple.
Well, I have to, my father, he passed in 2003 at 90, was a wonderful painter. And he was working on apples, and of course, having a sense of humor, it was apples and oranges at times. But when the apple element emerged, which again, I was not expecting, and I showed you on the sculpture where I touched her belly and there was the apple. Well, actually, there is a chair, which maybe Alex will bring. Can you bring that chair over? The Eve chair? Oh, here's the apple. Because I'll show you on the Eve chair. What's fascinating is that first of all, I started to paint this this chair, which is very old, and it shouted at me saying, "You can't paint me. I'm an antique." And it's interesting when you're working with the creative how you really run into, well, when did this law enter me? Why do I have, that's not true. In other words, I had to, as it was saying, no, I would paint it. And what's interesting is that I was asking about, because I'd seen a red with Sophia, I saw what looked like the apple, and I just mused. I thought, well, what is this apple? What is this apple of Eve? And I walked over to this chair, and we can see, I don't know, but there's a girl and a boy on the top, and there was an apple tree. So I started painting it. And then the apple, you can see, fell off the tree. but it fell into a type of alchemical alembic of the blossom. So this became Eve's chair, and anybody whose bottom sits here is sitting on the apple. And that's why, from that, like the bouncing ball, I started following the apple, and it went up to her belly. And that's when it struck me, we realize that when we turn an apple like this, we have what? The 5-pointed star. Now we also have the toroidal shape, if we think about this. And everything, even the first thing I showed you of forbidden fruit, the delicious knowledge of Eve, this gesture is this releasing through the top of the head, the open eye, like a circulatory system, this movement of life. And that's why even the shape of the apple indicates the function of the apple in this narrative. And what I love to point out, between Lilith and Eve and Christ, all of these things really affirm what, as I said, what Campbell, Jung, and a lot of different psychiatrists, psychologists, and theorists are talking about, which is we are composed of these qualities. And to that I say I, because as these energies started to appear, it's more like a storyteller going, oh man, that's a much better story than I was thinking about. And the apple itself then becomes on this sort of, as it reappears, like the heron reappears, that every time it does, it becomes the indicator of not just life, but deliciousness. Things that we don't think about. We usually think about the form, we think about the structure, we study the implication and the statistics, but we forget about nourishment, about sweetness, about that idea of the fullness of things. And I think that the apple, like the feminine here, and the intimacy here, I think is trying to return us to the truth that we really can only experience with those we love, which is intimacy, that deliciousness of that which is not to be shared with the world in a debate or anger, but actually, since we are together, let us take a bite out of this deliciousness. So it's a really beautiful symbol that I was not expecting to see.
Well, thank you. I mean, as I was seeing it all through you, I was thinking of it through all the fairy tales and the biblical stories, and there's just so much. It really stands out. And I just wanted to hear you talk about it. So thank you so much.
And I think, just to add on, I think that's what was very vivifying for me, that a lot of the biblical implications actually went back to the early times, because I was fascinated with Gnosticism and early Christianity, and so I studied a great deal about those times, and it really goes back to that time of a great excitement about these things, and that there is something about the reemergence of this that is trying to put religion not in the institution or in the book or in the belief, but into the art, into the narrative, into the story. So again, here we live with Eve, we live with Lilith, we live with Christ and Buddha and Kuan Yin. We live with all of the different archetypes, because they're essentially saying, when you return home, you make room for all of us. It's not a matter of judgment, it's a matter of inclusion. So that's why the apple, again, is so powerful.
Thank you.
This was absolutely unbelievable. I've never seen anybody walk and talk and engage in a mythic journey in this way. So it was, as a psychologist, mind-blowing, because you have reached such a level of consciousness. I've never seen that before in this way. It's just amazing. And the one question I have for you is, how do you use in the word that you used, your mentoring device, which I thought was so interesting. How do you use it in your life?
What is fascinating for me is that a lot of this is actually, it downloads in tides, as if to say that one condition leads to another condition, and that we are composing, in a way, almost like a flower, a quality that can hold more and more of its own implications. And that's really what I've been feeling, this feeling of a growing mentoring relationship that allows us, if you think about a tuning fork, and I learned this at Tikal in the Palenque rainforest. I said, I'm on an amplifier. This has nothing to do with religion. This has to do with the understanding of a type of fractal amplification. And I find this to be true here, that Because if you think about the question is, to tell certain truths, we need the symbols to be appropriate. Otherwise, it's masking or missing the deeper component elements. So that's what becomes so interesting here, is because the questions do, and you think about the mythic narrative talking about it, it's like, well, how do you walk it? How do you live it? How do you allow it to be a participation rather than just an observation? And that as this has grown, I sometimes think of it as a crystal radio set. As the qualities have grown, and it's going back to the other question about correspondences and about comparisons, that I started to realize that because this was slowly emerging, that it wasn't emerging in a linear sense, it wasn't progressive, it was emerging in a type of greater ambient or spherical sense, as if the living knowledge of the library itself creates here a type of alembic, a type of condition that isn't insisting. This is what was interesting for me about the appearance of the Watchers, because the Watcher quality is, from direct experience of it, it's the quality of sentience and consciousness that is, you'd say, our divine progenitors, meaning the qualities of sentience that we are composed of. But the genius behind the plan is that there was non-interference, meaning that if something is done for us, we believe that he or she who is doing it is the one who is able to, and we lose faith in the capacity that we are capable of these things. And that what became more and more apparent is that the Watchers create, like this room creates, the conditions where access and resource are, you can access, but you can't without the appropriate etiquette. Meaning that it's not about shouting and ranting, it's about finding this other place of stillness, which I also believe has to do with the creative spirit. You know, we've been taught to be artists, we've been taught that it's about art, about commerce, about making a living. And this actually goes back to a much more ancient thing about know the relationship with the creative spirit. Once you trust it, begins to animate not part of reality, but all qualities of reality, like studying dreams, become a symbolical feedback system. That's why, with a lot of things going on now, I look at things very archetypally. I even told people that when you spend 17 years working on trumps, which are what the tarot archetypes are called, and you've worked on one called the Trump Tower, which is Mars, and he's orange, you start to, and it's all about setting things, creating a fire that cannot be returned to as it once was, that it's a fire that insists upon transformation. It's very alchemical. We start to see once again that we're involved in a much greater symbolical theater that helps us take a breath and not, like at the mirror, keep our nose pressed up against the mirror, thinking, why can't I do anything about it? And this is actually saying, you have no idea how powerful your thoughts are. But if you're doing this, your thoughts are about, why can't I get in? If you turn around and you return to this other story, then everything, and this is to end the question, which is a long answer, but it's that everything will then light up and mentor. I'm amazed at the conversations I have in here that, although I'm speaking out loud often to the books, the answers are delightful. It's something, but I do think that I often think about this room, that I had to do the 17 years of the tarot. I had to study Hermeticism. I had to understand esoteric philosophy. I had to, otherwise the conditions and the energies that would move through me here, I think a lot of people, it would have just turned them into a puddle of goo. They're enormous energies, but I feel like they're slowing down to a rate where we can honor them like a theater piece. You know, they've come to be with us and to stabilize and to give us permission to trust this imagination of ours. Oh, thanks. The chairman.
I've been there. I've been there quite a few times, and I've enjoyed it very much. And every time I thought that, well, I think I'd.
Did we lose it?
That's a big uh-oh.
Did we lose somebody?
Yeah, well, he was going to say
Expanding, and
something,
I think
and if you don't have the words,
describe it or
you
define
have
it
to
in
be
terms
silent.
of space,
All right.
in that it's a space.
Sorry, I just crossed through the mirror. Did I miss anything?
Alex is back.
It was 1600 when I left.
Yeah. Yes. Well, actually, this we go downstairs, and I'm convinced that actually there's a comedy in my head of every time we leave the library, like we're always in the library, but we're always very philosophical and questioning, like, yeah, well, in the 18th century we figured this out, and it's like, so, well, what do we do now? What do we, like artists always re-examining. Well, if we did this in the 16th century, what's it like in the 17th century? How do we readdress the question? And I'm convinced that we keep going downstairs, and by the time we hit the second stair down, we forget everything, so that we enter each world without knowing, and that when we finish, we reascend into the library. And when my dad died, I actually had the direct experience of his book of life being squeezed and the waters returning to the waters of life. And his book, his name was Joseph, his book of Joseph being put back onto the library shelf with this incredible sense of reverence from the voice saying, but now it's been lived. And I thought that's what we don't understand, is coming downstairs in these lives, in these bodies. We really don't know what's going on upstairs. We don't really understand that we're part of a great conversation, and that there's a nobility in our willingness to continually return and to never know and always be forced to rediscover. And this is what I think and why I believe that our consciousness, as the artist of consciousness, not an artist as a painter, but an artist of consciousness, realizes that the infinite potentiality of the possible and even the impossible need to be explored, because in exploring these things, we not only honor them, but as we bring them to life, they transform who we think we are. And I think this is important because we have a living structure then that is essentially in this home saying that the journey of as above, so below, of Thoth's library, was as the black and white below in my tarot in the studio below, the black and white keys of the piano, the instrument, the father's room. I designed the room for my dad, so it's the father's room that the son designed. And there's the tarot archetypes, because the son says to the father, hey, Dad, what's the difference between things? And the father says, listen, son, you're not leaving the house until you know the difference between the devil and the empress. So I'm going to take about 17 years with you. And then I'm going to send you out into the world so you'll be challenged, this instrument of yours. But you'll come back, because you'll always find a way back to the intimate, or to that which does demand what the lower part of this house does, which I see as there are three levels. There's the below, and then the midsection, which is my domestic plane, meaning my living room and bedrooms, our kitchen. This is important because it's saying that the ascension from below to above is not leaving. It's actually one place. It's one house with different rooms. So the questions upstairs are different than the questions downstairs. The questions in the imagination are different than the questions of the black and white of structure. And when we think about that, well, what's the other room? It's the living room. It's the bedroom. Well, those are the questions of domestic space. So those questions have certain truths and ways that they must be dealt with and answered. Then the room with black and white and structure, the instrument, they must be dealt with. How do we navigate this thing? And then as we integrate, we rise up into the hieroglyph of the human soul, the picture book of the human soul. And it welcomes us. And it says, you have been struggling to venture toward this mirror of unique identity and self-reflection. How heroic. Because in this long journey of thousands of years, you would always feel abandoned, always feel that you were not enough, that there was somewhere to get to. And now that we've gotten there, and like with the pandemic, now that we can't leave home, it asks a different question. If you can't escape, if you can't get away, who do you think you are? And do you turn around and just go, I'm just linoleum, I'm not golden, look at the floor, I'm just ordinary. This alchemy says, no, you start with the ordinary and you trust the creative spirit, tell a story you can live with to those you love, and you'll become a gardener of the human soul. You'll be an architect of ideas that people can live within, because you're not telling them how to live. You're reminding them to live. And that's why I love, again, coming full circle, that everything in this work, from the mandala to the tarot, are wheels, wheels within wheels. And the question, and what I get here, is that we have been going across the ages over and over again, until finally we could hold the below, the black and white, and the above, the mandala, the blossom, and not leave home to do so, not being swept into Alpha Centauri or the Pleiades. It wouldn't make any sense to us. We've struggled forever to humanize cosmic knowledge. That's what this is saying. We wanted to slow it down so it would finally be human, and we'd no longer wish to simply return to a state of being we could no longer be, or places we could no longer get to. It's quite a lovely story if we could settle down and enjoy our humanity a bit and honor it.
I see Zaman's back. Do you want to try again, Zaman?
Well, I think I see there is a life after interruption.
Good.
I think. Sorry, I don't know how it happened. I mean, I usually try it, but I'm not that successful. But this time I was. I was talking about it in terms of space, and the reason I don't like the word space is that it implies a kind of a void, an emptiness in it, whereas place implies more fullness in it. And I think the space that you have created around yourself, it has that aspect of inviting people in. And once you're invited, you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to see what's there and let me enjoy it. And but the point is that there is so much richness in it that it doesn't allow you to enjoy it to the fullest, because before you have any chance, the page turns on you, and then there's another layer and another layer, and it keeps going. And the other thing is that if this is the human soul, and if you put the concept of the human soul next to, let's say, a painting, we usually define a painting by a frame. And the frame says, okay, this is what you're going to see, no more. Whereas here, there is no frame.
Yeah.
Infinity is right there. And so if the painting goes into the sofa, it goes into the sofa, it goes into the bench behind it, and it keeps going. There is no end to it. And I've been upstairs, I've been almost in every room in your house. And it's so wonderful that it's not only expanding and flowing, but it is expanding in a very meaningful way. The concept of a continuum is taken to its maximum. I think that's the beauty of it. The question I have, and I'm not sure if this is a question, but it's either a question or a comment. But I think in the pre-biblical myth, the apple was actually a pomegranate.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
which has the same meaning, essentially. Yeah, go on.
Because the Europeans, I don't mean to be kind of insulting, but because Europe was cold and there wasn't enough, they didn't have enough fruit or as much fruit as, say, the Middle East or India, most of the words for those things were reduced to either an apple, like in French, pomme de terre, pomme d'amour, I mean, everything is pomme, pomme, pomme. Or you go into English and everything is berry, strawberry, mulberry, blueberry, boysenberry. I mean, they're all these berries. And I think that pomegranate or the pomegranate would have been the original. So I was thinking that in all of your paintings, whether by design or some interesting coincidence, the color of the apple is the color of the pomegranate.
Did you know
it's very interesting you say that, because and a lot of times when I do the tour, I would often say this is an apple, or if you prefer, a pomegranate. So it's you're very right. I agree with that. I found that. But this is also an interesting question about the migration, and you'd say cultural, but also the migration of symbols, just as some, in a way, as a fascinating shading, going back to the idea of comparison, but not as comparison, of either or, but actually as a type of larger, almost musical phrase between these different qualities. Because to me, if you start to philosophically ponder a pomegranate, it really does reveal the essential truths that the apple reveals, but in a way, as we know, which I think is really that sense of language itself, where a language reveals certain nuances that the other one simply cannot. So I love holding the two qualities and not saying it's this or it's this, as much to say as, isn't it interesting that it has this deep history of both?
Well, and it was Da Vinci's fetish fruit. He hides them in all his paintings.
That's interesting. Yeah. Did you know that about Da Vinci and hiding his pomegranates? Alex told me that.
But the thing is that the pomegranate, when you open it, you open it in a certain way. You draw a parameter around it and lift up the top. Then when you look at it from the top, the description that in some scriptural text is given to the Garden of Eden, that it has these different gates, different parts. You see it in the pomegranate, that the different clusters, and then they are separated by, kind of partitioned, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that is also either symbolically or otherwise part of the image of what
the description of New Jerusalem has been likened to that section as well.
Did you hear that? About New Jerusalem?
The description of New Jerusalem has been likened to the section of the pomegranate as well.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that actually, what I love and realized is that in the study of symbolism, because one studies it, is that the first principle of both the pomegranate and the apple are that we are alive, and that the truth in life. I love the idea that you're talking about, that it reveals in its very structure these different implications in terms of the New Jerusalem, in terms of as you said, the gates. Because I really think that that's where nature, if you think about a quality that doesn't insist, and it says, if you allow the poetic, the grace of things to emerge, you'll see how these things flow together. But if it has to be done for you, you're not ready because you're unwilling to participate. You want to be taught, or you want to be entertained, or you want to be convinced, as opposed to that listening with an inner ear that begins to ask that question, what may I learn from you? And this goes back to where you asked about earlier, where I was asked about the mentoring nature of this, of the hieroglyph, is that I really do feel that everything wishes, in a way, Rilke got at it, that the thing itself transcends itself. It yearns to be realized by those of us in passing, and that when we animate it, it wants to reveal its inner secrets. And usually we're so busy defining it that we silence that. But I do feel like that's one of the great keys to sacred symbolism, and the truth that whenever we look at a lily or a rose, or that we're first notice that I am alive. That is my greatest point, that what this conversation is going to be about is life, not abstraction, not mere mathematics, but really the mathematics of nourishment.
I'd seen Voris turn his microphone off. I'd love to hear from him if he's still with us.
I'm still with you, Will. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I want to make a comment and then ask you a question, Leigh, if I can.
Please, yes, please.
But before we do, I'm glad that Zaman is a very brave spirit, and I'm glad you brought up the pomegranate, because that makes me think Persephone, right?
Yes. And
so that takes it another way. Yeah. And I like the way that both of you handled it with a kind of grace, which I really very much appreciate. So in terms of my comment, I'm very pleased that you brought up your interest in early Christianity and Gnosticism, because for me, the reason why I'm moved by to call it a presentation is doesn't even get to what I think you did. Mm-hmm. I've listened to a lot of brilliant talks, so that's not what it is for me. I listened to some insightful talks, that's not what it is for me. What I love about what you did, your performance, is that it reminds me of Gnosticism and verse 70, where, and you're one of the few people that I've seen who actually embody this, and this verse changed my whole way of thinking about spirituality and religion and what it means to be alive. The verse is, if you bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will destroy you. And it seems to me that you have brought forth all that which is within you. And I really appreciate that integration. That means a lot to me because you seem to embody that. So you make me think of that in its kind of the best way, because not only did you bring forth what is productive about your own soul, but you also brought forth your woundedness. So that was very moving to me. So I very, very, very much appreciate it.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. And I appreciate your appreciation, because I really do feel that's a beautiful quote. I've always felt that about that which is within us. Mm-hmm. It doesn't know what it is. It doesn't know what it wants to be any more than something's yearning to be born. And I do feel like that difficult gestation, the realization that there's not a logical way, but a willingness to oftentimes follow and insist that one not succumb to the anguish, but actually utilize that as an even deeper spur to keep going. Almost that there's a type of unique strength in the human heart, I'm convinced, that begins to recognize that as much as one would hope that these things would matter to the world, that it really doesn't, and therefore it becomes tenfold important that as an individual you think, well, then if it matters to me, then it must truly matter. And I feel like that's why I've never, I almost feel like in another life I'll rest more, because I've been really just driven to find a way to give voice to things that and I remember, because I was plunged into my unconscious as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, and I had lucid dreams, out-of-body experiences, nightmares, and hypnagogic paralysis, which I still have at times. And this, because of this, I didn't go as I put it, I didn't need hallucinogens. I needed to find Carla, my wife. I was dealing with, well, what do you do when all of these qualities where, they'll joke, I know I'm not mad, or I'm not crazy, but if I don't find a way to talk about these things or find a language for them, they will make no sense to anyone else. And what I love about the art is, because art isn't about the artist. This is what I feel. It's almost like you said about the optimism or the feeling it gives you, is that, it's like a Beatles song. What I love is that something very human is brought forth in the passion of the individual that says, I wish this would matter to you, but it doesn't need to, because it matters to me. So if I honor it, if I cultivate it, like this is my victory garden, if I make this valuable, then I'm imbuing it with values that to me are eternal, meaning that what you love will grow. Also what you hate will grow. So there really is one question upon us. What will you grow? And I think that the sense of, and I love this idea of the Gnostic relationship, because I do feel that oftentimes that we have forgotten the celebration, the dance, and that when we read ancient texts and early Christianity and about the Essenes and about Jewish mysticism, all these things, it's not meant to be a gauge of which was right or wrong, but this immersion into the truth that drink deeply, live vibrantly, be free, don't compare, live now and here. And that to me is what brings us, again, in the theatrical sense, onto stage together, no longer just sitting and critiquing, but participating. And what I love, sort of bringing this all the way around, is that what I love for me is that when I fell on my knees on 9/11, I had no idea this would happen. I had no idea that, you can't see it, but if you have chroma depth glasses, if you put on 3D glasses here, this becomes multidimensional. A fixed, multidimensional reality that is not doing anything for us, but the glasses are saying, if you look at me one way, put the glasses on, look at me again. There is more than one way to see. And this is part of that sense also, I believe, that we've studied all the books, we've studied all the doctrines, we've compared, and now it's that sense, as I showed you in the beginning, of the chalice, of the grail. How do we actually embrace it and say, at least here, you're invited? And that's what our home, Carla and I opened our home, and we've had, as Dana was saying, for many, many years, not just discussion groups, we've also had presentations, everything from sound baths to the Dalai Lama's monks chanting to Alex's documentaries. So it's been a very marvelous energy here of where people like yourself, like all of us, gather and have said over the years at Olendar, the name of my home, at least here, let these things matter. And this is Shumash land, the sacred Shumash land, who lived here for 10,000, still do a few, but for 10,000 years without a word for war. And as the white guy on the Shumash land, I had to look at myself honestly and say, all right, how do you make sense of this? A lot of blood is in the soil. And I started to think of the ego reaching the Pacific Ocean, this white boy, going across, taking everything, saying, what are you doing with my property? Meaning taking religions, taking people, taking lands, voracious appetite for more. I need more, I need more, I need more, until we reach the coast here. There's no further to go. And the question then shifts. What do I do with all of the darkness that essentially we've gone through? And it's saying that on this sacred land where there's no further to go, the ancestors stand with you. And they ask you not to fight over the books or those conditions that got you here, but to put them lovingly back on the shelf, to step back as we do in the hieroglyph and see that all of the different parts were essential to the greater story in question of what does it mean to be human. And that as we do not seek to go further, but actually like a tree, to go deeper into our roots. And this is why this is, again, the domestic key and the ancestral key, is the ancients that we are rise up through us and begin to honor the fact that only by reaching the point on our own, where we are exhausted by the mirror of self-reflection in the sense that I can't get anywhere, I finally see myself, but I don't like that. What do? It says, turn around, you're home. And the Shumash here say, there is no guilt, there is honor. So honor this earth. We were the caretakers and we love this land. You express your truth by loving this land, and I do. And I've always felt, I grew up 2 miles from here, so I feel, again, almost like a very part of the soil itself here. And it wants to say, honor me. That's what the fire said. It said people have forgotten what they love. There's a drought in the human heart, knowing what they hate, judging their neighbors, forgetting about community. And the fire said, I will bring everyone to their knees. This is a time of apocalypse and judgment, meaning that you are not to condemn your neighbor, but to think of community, to honor the fact that to understand who we are, all the characters are essential. But the key to who we are is that where we live and how we compose the story allows us to either live with it or be undone by it. And this is why I think the art element is so important, and that we as creative beings are emerging, because we're not trying to convince each other. We're trying to say, yes, there's a way to approach these things that says, it's up to you. But the Grail taught, you're not given anything. And anything you seek to know, you become worthy of it, and it will reveal its secrets. And if you are not willing to love what you seek to know, do not expect any doors to open.
Leigh, you have the most graceful way of bringing something full circle. I'm reminded of the phrase that you make something and then the thing that you make makes you.
Yes.
Whether it's language or art or relationships, whatever we pour our heart and soul into comes back tenfold.
Absolutely.
And it's just beautiful that you would have agreed to come and join the Myth Salon.
Wouldn't miss
I think what I would like to do is throw out an invitation to you and to people that once we are back at a place where we can gather, that we would congregate and hold a myth salon out at Olander.
Yes, that's a definite do. Yes,
And,
absolutely.
you know, I just really feel I am so grateful. I'm filled with gratitude. I feel grateful. On that note, what I would like to do is go out the way that we come in, with a moment of silence. So join me, please. Leigh, Alex, and especially, Alex, I can't say enough about the quality of what you brought into, and when we talked about doing this.
I don't think it's ever been done.
You are a wizard.
No. It's something that the iPhone 12 can do, and I think we did it. I don't know. I've never heard of it.
You're saying it was the phone. I would say that it's Alex. I don't think I could have. I have an iPhone 11, which can do the same thing. I couldn't have done that. That was just a masterful performance on both of your parts, and two amazingly talented people. And so, on behalf of the Myth Salon and Will and Zaman and Voris and Dennis and Tarja, coming all the way from North Carolina. I mean, you know, she's staying up way past her bedtime. You know, so thank you so much, and we'll talk soon. Welcome everybody, and have a great evening, and
we'll see you all at Olander. Thank you.
We'll see you all soon.
All right. Bless you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.
What an evening.
Oh, that's great.
All right. Leigh.
Yes.
I wrote you a little while ago. I wanted to invest in your three books.
Oh, great. Okay.
And if I know you're out there, but Alex is down here, and I can send you a check or PayPal or something like that. But I'd like the hard copies.
Okay.
Just tell me what it is.
Great. Okay.
And when Alex is on his way tooling around town, he and I, it's a lot easier for Alex and me to hook up than it is for you and I.
What I'll do is I'll get them together, and next time Alex is out, he can pick them up. And
wonderful.
Great.
Wonderful. Because
thank you for inviting me. This was delightful.
And I'm very serious about summer. We'll do some. We'll work it out, and we'll figure out how we can draw some people out there. Maybe we'll get Michael Malura out there. Who knows?
Great. You know? No, I really think the more we can get people, as you know, engaged directly. So much of this is, I feel so strongly that it's telling all of us, you've learned enough, you know enough. So now just enjoy this other quality that begins to essentially teach us to trust more and more what is the synchronistic, the unique, strange coincidences, that there is a deeper choreography that is inviting us to engage in trusting truly that which is not seen, but begins that sort of deeper current. I'd love to get people up here.
How do we get the video?
Trusting, I'll have it for you probably over the weekend.
All right. You want to put it on Vimeo or something?
Yeah, I'll put it on YouTube, or you can do something with it as well.
Well, it's going to be gigantic, no?
Let's see what I come up with.
Yeah.
I also, I'm doing this project on the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
The line that I was working with in the last one is, there's nothing as lonely as distrust.
As distrust.
Yep.
That's a wonderful line.
I didn't make it up. I stole it.
No, but it's a wonderful line, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah,
It really,
yeah.
I mean, we talk about trusting and love and all of that kind of thing, but the antithesis of that isolates us and alienates us
Yeah.
in a way. And I thank you for your trust and friendship, and you just have made for a beautiful event. I mean, people have loved this. So
Oh, that's so fabulous, Dana. Well, I really, I do. I feel like, I feel it's not biblical, but I feel this deeper sense of a gathering of those that care about these things. And I rather feel that this art is, we're so used to things that are heavy sales, trying to convince and be mass this and that. And I really think that the reason this art has remained so insular in an odd way, not that it's not been shared, but I rather feel that it itself is collecting not fans, but those that, again, like fellow actors, are being reminded of their part in a way, the theater of the psyche. Do you know, like it is a message meant for us.
well, and we're all playing characters in an inspirational story that if we allow one another a role in it, we all get a chance to play.
Exactly. And I think that's the relationship of the Salon myth. I think my Tuesday night discussion, all of these are where these other energies say you're giving us permission to join you.
Yep.
And,
You know what's being so remarkable is that I don't know why we have by some strange insanity, the setting of mirroring video has activated itself. There's been some strange things that happened tonight. So I noticed early on that we were having this issue of the room being mirrored. And it annoyed me because I kept looking. I'm going to switch to the microphone. I kept looking over at the screen going, what the hell? It's being mirrored.
it goes backwards.
It was backwards. It was broadcast backwards. And that gave me, in a live happening kind of idea, something that I've been thinking about, which is, since you talk about mirror and about symmetry so much, to start flipping the image over. I don't think you know this, but throughout the presentation, I would flip the image over, so in mid-sentence you'd be like this.
Alex, there are no accidents.
And then you'd be like this.
Yeah.
But that got triggered. It was something I thought about doing, but not today. In general, I thought about doing it. And when I glanced over at the screen and the image was inverted, I took it as a signal to start inverting the image myself.
All right. I'm going to have to go downstairs, both of you.
That's great.
Love you both.
Oh, bless you.
Okay, be well.
Excellent rehearsal. Now, when we're really doing
Yeah, let's really do it.
All
okay,
right.
bye.
Well, thank you so much, Danny. Have a great night.
Ciao.